Morning.
Good morning. Welcome to the 4th edition of Conversational Chaos. Beautiful day today. Beautiful sunrise coming.
It is. It looks very nice today.
It is dark, but...
You can see it at the horizon if you look hard enough.
What's going on, Jason?
So I have a story to tell you. Start with.
Oh, boy.
So I'm sitting at the table eating dinner with my kids and I ask them how their day's going. And my son starts telling me the story about, he's learning about this episode, this event that happened a long time ago with some molasses. And it was in this giant holding container and they mixed up some stuff and people started hearing these popping noises and this giant wave of molasses started coming down the road and it was swallowing people up.
Okay, hold on. Well, I want to stop your story here for just a second. Why was your son learning about this?
I didn't get to that part.
Okay.
Oh, he's something about their school. He's in 6th grade now where they are learning about natural disasters. So they've learned about tsunamis and volcanic eruptions and earthquakes. So I guess this was just next on the list. It's part of science class just to get them excited. Anyways, so he's telling me the story. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. He's got to be making up a story and telling me. So I ended up having to Google it while he's telling me. I'm like, and it did happen. There's a Boston molasses massacre.
Yeah.
Where there was a vat that exploded and it sent a 25-foot tall tidal wave of molasses down the road at 35 miles an hour.
Yeah, and killed a bunch of people, what I can remember hearing.
Yeah, it was terrible.
How many people was it that died?
I didn't remember that part. I don't remember all the facts.
It just seems, I guess if you're talking about natural disasters, molasses is a natural substance, I guess. So we might as well consider that a natural disaster.
I felt bad at first, though, because he's telling me the story, and I just have this complete look of disbelief, and I didn't even let him finish before I'm searching on it to see if he's telling me a lie or not. But turns out that a couple years ago, Harvard did a study because they didn't believe the news clippings from the day, where they built a scale mock-up of the city and sent corn syrup down it to try and reenact it. And it was exactly how the news stories told it. So I've just put myself in the Harvard researchers category.
Well, you're going to put yourself
smarter.
In the Harvard researcher
that's
category?
Not too big of a leap.
Well, I think that it's such a bizarre thing to happen. I mean, I've heard. I grew up basically in New England anyway, so I had heard that story when I was a kid.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I'd heard about it. I mean, of course, I wasn't alive then. Certainly was. What year was that?
1919.
1919. So obviously I wasn't alive at that time. I wasn't even thought of at that time. And in fact, I don't think my grandfather was alive at that time. But I just remember hearing stories as a kid about the molasses tidal wave that happened in Boston and the fact that it killed a lot of people. But it's such a bizarre story that you wouldn't believe it unless you knew somebody that was there. For the Harvard researchers to not believe the news outlets, why would they lie? Why would several news outlets lie about a molasses tidal wave? That just seems dumb. What if you're trying to get people to want to come to your city? The last thing you want to tell them is, "Hey, you might die from a molasses tidal wave, but come on over. It's going to be great."
Well, same reason we have Bigfoot and those kind of stories. It's entertaining. So maybe they thought it was just entertainment or just folklore.
I guess that's the folklore story. Do you believe in Sasquatch or the Yeti, abominable snowman?
I can't say he doesn't exist, but there's not enough data to tell me that he does. Although there was a story just over here when they were building the mall nearby about the construction workers were sleeping in their car because they were, unfortunately, they were illegal workers. They didn't have a place to stay, I guess, so they just slept in their car overnight. And they were woken up by this giant beast banging on their window that ran off. It was in a lot of the news. The same thing was in the news. A lot of the NBC and headline news of the area at the time, which was interesting to be covered by that scale.
I would be more apt to believe in a Sasquatch in someplace like the Pacific Northwest or in British Columbia or Alaska, or a Yeti somewhere in the Himalayas where there's no people. The fact that we live in an extremely populated part of the country, basically the area from I would say now it goes down as far as Richmond. From Richmond to Boston is basically just a giant suburb. So for something like that to exist here and to never have been seen, I think is an extremely remote possibility. Like I said, Pacific Northwest, where there's, miles and miles and miles and miles and miles of mountains and trees, something like that could stay hidden. I have no doubt.
Well, there's a lot of trees around.
Well, of course, there's a lot of trees around.
A lot of forest areas, especially Pennsylvania.
Well,
Lots of
true.
rural areas there.
That's true. But you said the mall was local.
Well, it was a forest before they built the mall. They were working on it. Maybe you needed a place to go.
Yeah, I guess.
I didn't say it was real. I'm just saying it was in the news, just like this Molasses story.
Just like the Molasses story. I actually just watched a television show the other night, not about molasses, about the Yeti. I don't remember what it's called. Expedition
History
Unknown.
Channel?
Yeah. Was it History Channel or Discovery Channel or National Geographic? One of the three. But I think it was called Expedition Unknown, maybe. And I actually like this guy that hosts the show, and his name right now I can't remember, but he's basically traipsing around the Himalayas looking for evidence of the Yeti. And I tend to believe that there's certainly things that we have not discovered, certainly things that we don't know, especially in the ocean. You can't see in the ocean. Your sight is very limited, and until we, I guess, colonize the ocean, I don't think we're going to do that. But if we did, I think we'll start to find more stuff. But every once in a while, you find these. You can find video clips online on YouTube for these underwater cameras at like drilling rigs and things like that, where every once in a while something very odd goes swimming by and they can't identify what it is. So I think certainly there's things that we haven't found, probably more in the ocean than on the land since we populate the land, but there's definitely things on land that we haven't been able to identify or even really to find. You hear about these expeditions going out into like the rainforest and they come back with, 15 new species of spiders or something like that. So it's just, there's stuff we just don't know.
That's how the Cloverfield movie is.
I've never seen Cloverfield.
You should watch it. It's mildly entertaining.
There's
thousands.
That's not a good sell. Mildly entertaining. Is that what was on the movie poster?
I think so. It's very polarizing, the views. So there's some that really like it and some that are really terrible. So it's entertaining, mildly.
So Molasses.
Molasses
tidal wave.
I was going to ask you if you cook with molasses, but you've told me already you're not a big chef.
If I cook with anything that doesn't involve packaged dried cheese, that's like a miracle.
Explained your love for macaroni and cheese.
Who doesn't love macaroni and cheese? That's just un-American to not like macaroni and cheese. I'm going to be the first to say that my children are just un-American.
Un-American?
Un-American. My children are un-American. They don't eat hot dogs. They don't eat Kraft macaroni and cheese. They don't eat chicken nuggets. They don't eat pizza. It's like, what the heck? You know how hard it is to feed children who don't eat those things? And there is nothing that I can make that both of my children are like, yay, we get to have, macaroni and cheese today. No, I don't get that. So like every night of the week, it's some sort of battle with one of my children over what they're going to have for dinner. And if I say, hey, we're going to have this for dinner tonight, and one of my children inevitably goes, oh, I hate that. It's so hard. But I do a lot of the cooking at home, but I don't do forethought. So if my wife leaves the cooking to me, like straight up to my own devices, it's going to be hot dogs, macaroni, and cheese. This is what we're going to have.
Nobody likes it.
Nobody likes it. Except for me. I like hot dogs and macaroni and cheese. Why? Because I'm a blue-blooded American.
What kind of hot dogs do you eat?
Salen's. Yeah, Salen's hot dogs.
Salen's.
Yeah, you can only get those at Wegmans.
Oh.
I don't think you can get them anywhere else around here.
Is there something special about them? They're made with
they're skinless wieners. I have no idea. I have no idea if there's anything really special about them. Honestly, I don't have a preference for what log of nitrates I'm eating. I don't have a very sophisticated palate. We've probably talked about this before, but I will literally eat anything. You can put anything in front of me, and I will probably eat it. As long as it's not completely raw, like you can't just take like a dead rat and put it in front of me. I'm not just going to eat the dead rat. But if you've cooked the dead rat or prepared it in some way so that I think you've cooked it, then I would probably eat it. I have no My palate's not sophisticated in a way that I desire those things, but I will eat pretty much anything. So when it comes to like my hot dogs, I really don't care. They could be made out of Komodo dragons. I really don't care at all what my hot dog is made out of.
So I have a test for you.
Oh no!
So I told you to bring a marshmallow in.
I
happen to have a brand of marshmallows that I am particularly fond of.
Okay, Are they Stay Puft marshmallows?
No, they're actually Israeli.
Israeli marshmallows.
Yeah.
Do they speak Yiddish?
I wouldn't know if they were speaking it to me. They have a little happy guy on the front, though. So
okay, so they're made in Israel, is what you're telling me.
Oh no, they're made in New Jersey. Oh wait, for New Jersey. I don't know where they're at. I have to read the bag later.
Okay.
Sorry for all the crinkling noise.
Okay, so I got what?
Can't do it today.
Why?
Moldy inside.
So you got moldy Israeli marshmallows. Are you sure?
Well, they're green. I have to do this another day.
Okay, well, you know what? I've gotten a marshmallow out of my marshmallow bag, which are... I have jet puffed marshmallows over here. So I'm going to eat this marshmallow because...
Those ones never go bad.
No, they don't.
We'll have to revisit this in the future episode.
Even the bag says on my jet puffed marshmallows, have fun with your yum. You know what? It's way too early in the morning to be eating marshmallows, but I'm going to eat another one. You just can't. You can't. It's like potato chips.
This is just a big letdown for me. I should just pick one out that's not moldy, but I can't do that.
Would you like a
no, thank you.
marshmallow?
I can't eat those ones.
I'm sorry, I can't eat those marshmallows. I can only eat my moldy Israeli marshmallows.
Once you have one of the other ones, there's just no going back. It just ruins it for you. I was just going to test to see if you could taste the difference.
I would imagine that the processed sugar tastes like processed sugar.
What?
That's all it is. The ingredients in my marshmallows. Let me read the ingredients in my
What's the difference between... What are you referring to as processed sugar? Not just...
Well, I guess all sugar
biting
is
on the
processed.
cane.
I guess all sugar is processed. Okay, so yeah, point out that I sound like a moron right now. Okay, let's see. Per serving, 4 marshmallows is 1 serving, and it is 100 calories. I'm actually sort of surprised it's only 100 calories for 4 marshmallows. I would not recommend this as a 100-calorie snack. Don't eat 4 marshmallows. It's probably really bad for you.
Just make it a 500-calorie snack and you're good.
But it has no fat. Marshmallows are completely fat-free, which is totally awesome. They only have 30 milligrams of sodium. So again, that's a good thing. However, 24 grams of carbohydrates.
Well, that's the sugar.
17 of which are sugar. Okay, no more marshmallows.
No more marshmallows. We'll save that for next time.
Does that mean I can leave my marshmallows here?
If you want.
I will. You know why?
Why
because they'll never go bad.
They do go bad.
There's going to be some sort of nuclear...
They turn liquidy.
No, mine don't ever turn liquidy.
That's because you have
they
those
get crusty. Grab the marshmallow and it's no longer like the outside it's almost like you leave a marshmallow out and exposed to the air too much and it gets kind of crusty. That's what happens to those over time. They don't liquefy. That would be
sticky?
Gross. No, where they're touching each other, they get tacky.
Yeah.
But where they're not touching each other,
but aren't they all touching each other?
No.
In the bag?
I guess the answer is yes. But I mean, look in the bag, you can obviously see the sides of a lot of marshmallows. So obviously large portions of the marshmallow. This is the dumbest tangent ever, by the way. We've already gone from molasses tidal waves. Now, why would you teach natural disasters? Teach about natural disasters to children? I mean, it's fine to explain what they are. So hurricanes, tornadoes, tsunamis, earthquakes, volcanoes. Okay, this is what these things are. But to tell a 6th grader, was that 11, 12-year-old, 11-year-old?
Yeah, 11, 12.
Okay, an 11-year-old. We can have these earthquakes, when the earth shakes around and stuff falls down. Oh, and when this happens, tens of thousands of people die. I mean, why would you do this?
Same reason we have action movies. They just find it exciting. They're kids.
Kids are... I don't want to...
They're not going to focus on the death and suffering and all that stuff. It's just
Well, they won't focus on the suffering because honestly, kids have no idea what that it's so out of context. They don't know what suffering is at this point.
they do.
They do, but they don't know what it is. They might know. Like, you know, I don't want to get into like abuse or anything like that, but kids who have bad homes know what it means to suffer, but they don't know what suffering is. If that makes any sense. It's out of context for them, so they don't have enough of a view to see. You know, kids can be apathetic. I always get those backwards. Empathy is when you feel sorry for somebody else, right? Apathy is when you don't. Okay,
yeah.
I always get those backwards. But kids can be empathetic, and they can see another child crying, and they can try to console them, but they don't know what like wholesale suffering is. So the people of Pompeii, for instance, that got buried under ash in a volcano, a child might walk through that site, you know, the archaeological site, and see all of these bodies laying on the ground. They might think, oh, that's kind of cool, or they might think that's just a neat thing to see, but their mind is not saying these people really suffered before they died. They died of, you know, hot gas inhalation or whatever, and you saw mothers clutching infants and, you know, people huddled together for safety and all this kind of stuff. So an adult sees that, and that goes through our minds is that was probably a very traumatic experience. Just like...
Well, that's different, though.
Well,
but go on.
Yes, but all I'm really saying is that kids don't understand what suffering really is. They can understand if somebody is in pain, and they can certainly understand that what they're going through may be pain, but they don't really know what suffering is. I'm not saying they're not suffering. I'm just saying that they don't really have an understanding of what it means.
Maybe not to the level that can occur. So they won't be able to see the building fall over and think, well, that person just got crushed to death or their arm got crushed off. But I think they would know people died and were hurt there.
God, to have your arm crushed off? God, that would hurt.
Yeah. But I mean, they're not, I would hope they're not exposed to that regularly to think that that's something that comes to their mind. But they probably see like the house is destroyed and say, oh, that poor family, their house has been destroyed, and they feel bad.
No, I would agree with that. I think that...
So they do know suffering, just not to the level that you know suffering.
I don't know suffering either.
Or an adult, how's that?
Yes, I understand what suffering is, but we as Americans, for the most part, don't know what suffering is. Not entirely. I don't want to put that blanket statement out. There's plenty of people that suffer. Children, there's plenty of children that are suffering for one reason or another. Plenty of spouses, whether it be the husbands or the wives, that are suffering for one reason or another. Lonely people and that are elderly that are suffering for one reason or another. There's plenty of suffering that goes on, but I'm just talking about starving to death. That's pretty awful. So I think that as Americans, we don't have as much of a concept of suffering as lots of other places around the world do. We need to change the subject, man. This is getting too heavy for me. So, you asked me yesterday about something.
Yes.
And you haven't asked me today about that something, and I was expecting you to do so.
Well, see, I was hoping to get you a little bit
tipsy,
fired up here. I guess first.
You want me to get fired up?
No.
I can get fired up, Jason. Well, it should have got me right at the beginning because I had just caffeined myself up, and I'm starting to level off. So,
well, I was hoping to feed you those marshmallows.
Well, I ate two. You want me to eat some more?
No, that's enough.
I don't want to. It'll upset my stomach.
How do you feel about the circus?
How do I feel about the circus?
Yeah, how do you feel about the circus?
That's a very general question. How do I feel about the circus? I think the circus is really, really weird. I have adverse thoughts about the circus, and I guess it's because when I was a kid, my brother was brought to the circus, and I was left at home, and I don't know why that was exactly. So I was jaded by that for years, that I never was brought to the circus when I was a kid. But like fairs, circuses, carnivals, all that kind of stuff weirds me out. I think those games are all totally rigged, and the crap you win is crap.
Yeah.
So I don't know why you would want to play those games, and the rides probably haven't been washed ever, unless some kid threw up on it, and in that case, they just used that cat litter to soak up all the liquid and then spray it off with a hose. I mean, it's probably never been cleaned. So that I'm not a germaphobe, but that kind of stuff just weirds me out. I'm not a big circus guy. I don't really like trained elephants or bears riding motorcycles, but hey, if there was a bear for me to wrestle, I would totally wrestle the bear. But lion tamers, like I feel bad for a lot of those animals. But I will say something I do find fascinating, and I don't know why this is. It was a couple years ago. They had Nick Wallenda was the guy's name. He was the guy who walked across the Grand Canyon on the tightrope.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, he's part of the Wallenda family, which is famous for like high wire acts.
Right.
High wire, and I think trapeze too. I think they do. I find that stuff really fascinating, but like the whole showmanship behind it, I'm not a big fan of. It's like watching the Super Bowl. Okay, they start a pregame show for the Super Bowl like 1:00 in the afternoon. What is the point of that? It goes on for hours. Who cares? That's a story. If I wanted a story, I would watch the Lifetime channel. I don't need a story. I want to watch the game. So when I'm going to the circus, I don't need all this fanfare. And don't get me started on clowns. Clowns are downright creepy. I don't understand. I'm not afraid of clowns. When I was a kid, I wasn't afraid of clowns. But I see a clown, it's like, okay, this is a creepy adult dressed in this ridiculous outfit with these giant shoes and a red nose and a wig. I don't find their behavior cute. I don't find it funny. I don't find it entertaining in any way. Even when I was a child, I didn't. And it didn't help that I saw the movie It when I was a kid. And Pennywise the clown, Tim Curry, I gotta tell you, did such a fabulous job playing Pennywise the clown in that movie. Scared the life out of me. I'm not scared of, like I said, I'm not scared of clowns. Yeah. But now, if I see a clown, it's total side of the eye. I got to keep an eye on it. Is he going to come and attack me or what? But what was his name? John Wayne Gacy was a JC.
A JC.
Outreach community organization.
Okay.
But John Wayne Gacy was a very community-oriented person, and he actually volunteered as a clown for like kids' parties and things like that. His clown's name was Pogo, and I think ever since then, I think the name Pogo has been, what would you call that, retired from clowning, so I don't think anybody's ever allowed to have the name Pogo the Clown again. And so there's like really creepy photos of John Wayne Gacy dressed like a clown, but clowns just kind of freak me out. So getting back to the circus, clowns totally freak me out. They're just weird and odd, and I don't find their antics funny at all, and they use those as fillers between acts. Right. And stuff in the circus. Not a big fan. Kind of babbled about the circus for a little bit, but I'm not a big fan of the circus. It's a very long answer for a very silly, short question.
It's a lot of detail.
How do you feel about the circus?
I don't like it either. It makes me feel uncomfortable. And I was listening to something the other day, and it was talking about the circus, and it made me. I have uncomfortable feelings towards the circus, and I couldn't pinpoint why. So I was trying to think about why that might be. So I've only been like once or twice, but I do like the high wire acts, but I don't need them to not have a net. I would prefer them to have a net. I don't like to be on the edge that they're just going to fall down and go. Like I would be just as happy watching the show if they fell into a net and were unsuccessful than getting squished.
Well, I think that the Wallenda family patriarch died in a high wire act in front of people. And I think they were doing, what did they call it? They did this, it was like a pyramid, basically, where there was four of the Wallendas on the bottom, and then they had these bars that connected their shoulders together. And I think that then there was two women on chairs on top of these bars that connected the people together, and there was somebody on top of that. It's called like the family pyramid or the Wallenda pyramid or the flying pyramid or something like that. I don't know. And they fell, and a couple of them died, I think. I know at least one of them got severely maimed, like broken spine or broken hips or something.
It's not going to end well.
No, it's not. It's not going to end well at all. It's entertaining to watch that, but I agree with you. Put a net. Who cares?
Right.
The entertaining part is that they're able to do it. The entertaining part isn't the fact that they might die if they fall. I don't remember off the top of my head. I don't remember whether or not Nick Wallenda, when he walked across the Grand Canyon, I don't believe he had any safety gear.
Probably not.
I don't think he did.
That's part of I think they think is the draw, is there's nothing to save you.
This is sort of off topic. Do you ever watch the show Outrageous Acts of Science?
No.
It's actually a great show to watch. It's always got these crazy people doing weird stuff. Every show has some sort of theme. And I just happened to catch an episode last night, or it's a rerun episode, but there was this guy who slacklined across some gorge in Turkey.
Okay.
Several hundred feet off the ground, but it was a slack line, so it wasn't even like steel, a taut steel cable. It was a slack line that whole distance, and it took him an hour. to walk across it. And it was quite impressive watching him do it, but he did have safety gear. But it was, regardless of whether he had safety gear or not, it's still impressive.
Right.
I'm generally afraid of heights. I mean, I can be in high places and it doesn't bother me, but if you put me on a slack line 300 feet off the ground, I would be a little, but I wouldn't make it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Like I've gone zip lining and things like that in really high places. And when I get in really high places, especially ones where I'm exposed, so if I'm in a high building, it doesn't bother me at all. But if I'm in high places and I'm exposed in a tree fort, basically is what these were. It's like the platforms where you do your zip lining from, were 40, 50 feet up in these trees. And they weren't very big. And there was 10 of us standing on these little platforms. And there's no railings. So it's just you. And literally you could stand on the edge and there's 50 feet below you. It's just a forest floor. I mean, you're clipped in, but doesn't make any difference. Still made me like super nervous. But I get really weak in the knees and my knuckles on my fingers feel weak. Like right now, talking about it, I can feel it. I don't think they are weak. Like if I were to, grab a hold of something, I'd still be able to hold on to it, but I can just feel this awkward feeling in my fingers and in my knees. Were you ever in the World Trade Center or a Sears Tower or the Burj Khalifa or anything like that?
Not that high. I've been in some other tall buildings, but nothing quite that tall.
My older sister, lived in New York City for at least a decade. And this is when I was a teenager. When I was in my late teens, into my early 20s, she lived there. And I used to travel down there a lot. I had a good friend at home who had been born in New York City, had a lot of family down there, so we would kind of go down together and visit his family and stay with my sister because she lived in Manhattan. But we would just kind of traipse all over the city just kind of for fun. We'd go wherever we wanted. Mm-hmm. And so this is probably 95 or 96. I went down to New York City and got to go up to World Trade Center and the Empire State Building. We actually did them both in the same trip. Empire State Building didn't bother me at all. Like you go out at the observation deck on the top of the Empire State Building and it's out in the open air, but there's like a big cage to stop people from jumping, I guess. And it feels safe. It feels really solid. Whereas the World Trade Center building was designed to sway a little bit in the wind because it's quite windy and it was very tall. Mm-hmm. And so when you go into the observation deck itself, that went all the way out to the edge of the building. So you could actually literally stand right against the glass and lean your head on the glass and look straight down the building. Whereas if you went onto the roof, you could go out onto the roof, but the roof, you couldn't go all the way to the edge of the roof. You were probably maybe 15 feet from the roof's edge. Yeah. But in the World Trade Center, if you were to go stand and like lean with your head against the window, just like Ferris Bueller and Ferris Bueller's Day Off when they're on top of the Sears Tower, they were all doing that. So we were doing that, and you can actually see, it was a really windy day, you could actually see the building the curve of the building when it was flexing in the wind. It was the weirdest thing ever. And I remember going up, it's an express elevator, it was, I should put that caveat in there. It was an express elevator that went from the first floor all the way up to the observation tower. And I think it took a minute, and it was hauling. The elevator was hauling pretty fast going up there. But the woman who was operating the elevator, they have this little speech that they give about whatever. And she said that on windy days, it can take the elevator as much as 2 minutes to go from the first floor all the way up to the observation deck because the elevator shaft is flexing.
It has to slow down.
It has to slow down.
Oh, wow.
So it was super weird. And you could feel it, too. You could totally feel the building moving. I just was recently on top of the CN Tower in Toronto. I didn't like that at all.
No?
No, they had one of those places that has like the acrylic floor.
Yeah.
So you can walk, and it's literally, I think it was, 1,100 feet or whatever, straight down. And I didn't like that. I was so uncomfortable with it. Yeah. I wouldn't even walk on the acrylic. I had to walk on like the metal I-beams that went across the floor.
So the whole floor, it wasn't just a section, it's the whole floor.
Not the whole floor. It's a large section of floor. Okay. But there's like these little kids doing handstands, looking down and doing cartwheels. And I'm like, that made me uncomfortable. I mean, it's sad to say, 41-year-old man, I'm uncomfortable watching these kids doing cartwheels over this acrylic floor. Because if it were just like a normal floor, it wouldn't have bothered me at all. But the fact that they're 1,100 feet off the ground made me weak in the knees and in the hands. I didn't like it. I thought it was cool. Yeah. And I have some really cool photos. It was really foggy that day. So it was a really neat layer of fog rolling into the city of Toronto off the lake. So I got some really cool photos that day, but it was still very uncomfortable. So you never been on top of any of those buildings?
I've been to I think it's the Prudential Building in Boston. That one was pretty tall.
Yeah, that's 45 stories, I think.
Yeah. I mean, you
so-
can feel that sway. It's not. I don't think it's built to sway. Like has the big pendulum inside, but
They're all built to sway.
right. Some have more than the
yeah.
others.
Yeah.
But yeah, it makes me uncomfortable. We went on vacation to Tennessee once, and we stayed in a hotel that was like 25 stories. You could feel that. And that took me a while to adjust to.
Oh, really?
I mean, we were staying in the room. You couldn't not be there. So, but yeah, it's a weird feeling.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of heights. I wish I were. I wish I were lots of things, but it just bothers me. It bothers me that I feel, I'm an athletic, strong guy, and yet put me on top of a tall building, I melt. I can't deal with it. Just watching movies with people doing death-defying leaps from buildings and stuff makes me weak in the knees.
Have you seen those videos?
Like the parkour videos of those weird
where
guys
they're standing up at the top?
Yeah, I can't watch them.
Yeah, I can't watch those.
I
think it's the same reason as the trapeze artists. It would be cool if I knew he wasn't gonna fall to his death. But
there was a Russian kid. I can't remember his name now off the top of my head, who was one of those kids who did all these famous things where he would like hang off the side of buildings or jump from one building to another or whatever. He took a lot of photos and videos of himself doing this, fell and died. Like 30 stories to his death. That's unpleasant. It's actually upsetting my stomach just talking about it. This is horrible. Absolutely horrible. As we sit in our high perch in our building right now.
One more thing for you.
Okay.
If you go to write something down, do you grab a specific pen, specific type of pen? Does it matter what kind of pen? Could it be just a stick? Do you even think about it?
It could literally just be a stick. I don't care at all.
You don't have like special kinds of pens?
No, there are pens there's pens that I like.
Yeah.
And there are actually pencils that I like too, which is weird. I like mechanical pencils, and I think it's just because the point is always the same.
Yeah, you don't have to keep sharpening it.
Yeah, I don't like normal number 2 pencils when they're nice and sharp.
Right.
Great, but after you write with it for a little bit, everything starts to get fatter. Like all the letters start to get fatter, and the stuff starts to blend together.
Yeah.
So when it comes to ink sticks, no preference. No, I mean, if I had a choice, like if I had 5 pens in front of me, and I knew how each one of them wrote.
Right.
I might pick the one that I would like the best, but if you stuck one pen in front of me, I wouldn't think, oh, it's not the one that I like. I don't want to use that one. I would just grab it and use it. It doesn't bother me.
So you haven't bought like several pens and have a sheet of paper and you test them out to see which one you like the best?
Again, this is totally something that you've done, haven't you?
I do. You have to check these things.
Do you have a spreadsheet for this too?
You can't write in a spreadsheet.
I'm just asking.
I have a chart in a notebook.
Okay, see now this is the kind of thing that you have to post. You got to post your chart. Your writing chart.
I'll have to see if I can get a picture of it. But it's you just write a sentence and then you wait a couple seconds, you drag your finger over it and see how much the ink smudges. And then you look on the other side of the paper and see if it bled through.
Do you have a standard sentence that you use?
Usually, yeah.
Can I ask what it is?
You know what? I just got a new notebook, so I don't have it with me. So
that's a new one?
That's a new one.
It's like half gone already.
There's sections in it. That's just the section that I have open.
Oh.
See, it's a notebook with 2 notebooks.
Okay.
And then each one is broken into sections.
Oh, sorry.
My table of contents and everything.
Oh my God, you have a table of contents in your notebook.
How else do you find your notes?
See, I've had this explanation, or I've had this conversation with people in the past about how my brain actually works. It doesn't work like a normal person's brain, I don't think. It doesn't work in a bad way, as I'm used to it, but I don't catalog things in my brain. So imagine your brain as a large file storage facility, like hard files, like filing cabinets. Okay. So just imagine like a giant warehouse full of filing cabinets.
Right.
And the average person takes whatever they've learned or some new piece of information. They go into their warehouse or their filing cabinets. They go to the appropriate filing cabinet. They open the drawer. They stick that little file in. They close the drawer, and then they leave. And then somebody could say, hey, what about X? And then they can say, oh, hold on, let me go to my filing cabinet. They would walk into their little warehouse. They'd go to that cabinet. They'd open the drawer. They'd pull out the little folder, get the information, put it back, close it, go back out and say, hey, okay, why? There's the answer, all right? Well, my brain doesn't work like that. I picture mine as like one filing cabinet in a very large room. So take like a 4-drawer filing cabinet and stick it in a giant Amazon warehouse.
Okay.
The cabinet is completely stuffed, like paper sticking out of all the little edges around the drawers and stuff. And now what's left is just a pile on the floor of just like random folders. And when I need to think of something specific, I don't have like a path. I literally just have to go to this pile and I like jam my hands in there and I just search around until I find the piece of information that I'm looking for. It is so bizarre how it works. And people will ask me, trivia guy down the hall, asks me all the time, he's like, how do you know all this stuff? Like, I have no idea. I have no idea how I remember those things, why I remember that the Quilt Festival is held in Houston, Texas. Not a clue why I would know that, but that piece of information got into my head somehow, and it just got put into that little folder. And instead of going to like a normal filing system, I'm just like, oh, whatever, it's not that important. I just throw it into this pile, and now I'm left with this giant pile, and it's impossible for me to go into this pile now and recatalog everything and like get new filing cabinets. So it's the system that works for me. I don't think it's a very good system. It's a very poor system, and I don't recommend. If you could recommend, it's just the way that it works biologically for me. I think that's just how my brain works. But so I think that's one of the reasons why I go off on tangents so much, is because as I'm looking for other pieces of information that I'm trying to pull out of this pile, I find squirrel. Like I find this really interesting piece of information, like, oh, that'll totally lead me in a direction. So we've had conversations many times in the past where we'll be talking about something and then all of a sudden it takes a hard right. And that's why. It's because something that's going on in this conversation that I'm pulling this information for, I found like a folder that doesn't really belong. It's just something else. I'm like, oh, it reminds me of this, but it's because it was just in the way of the information I was trying to get. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
It's very weird. Whereas you seem very categorized, like you have a table of contents for your notebook. Okay,
works.
All
the books have table of contents.
I never look at those. What? You
don't use the index either?
No,
I've tried to put indexes in. That's a little bit more work.
When I was in college, people used to ask me a lot because I take copious amounts of notes.
Oh,
but good. The reason why I did that,
they just take them and throw them on the floor.
Oh, I never read them. I never read my notes. This is going to sound really dumb, but I'm a very auditory learner. I'm not very visual, very auditory. So if you tell me something, I could have my eyes closed and you could just sit there and talk to me in a dark room. And I would.
That's different than most people.
Yeah. No, I learn things very easily that way. So I would go to all my classes. I never missed a class in college unless I was dead. I could have been drunk. I could have been really hungover. I could have been extremely sick. It doesn't matter. I had to go to class because if I didn't go to class and I didn't get the information that day, I could read it 10 times. I'm not going to remember it nearly as much as if I heard somebody tell it to me. Very weird. So in class, I would sit there and I would just take notes. I was just, in my mind, how I would break down whatever the professor was teaching. I'd be taking the notes based on what it was making my brain kind of think. So it was just helping me kind of categorize everything and catalog things that way. But people would ask me, oh, were you in class last week? Because a lot of college kids seem to just not want to go to class all the time. I don't know what that's about, but hey, can I borrow your notes? I'm like, yeah. I give them my notes and they'd bring it back to me and say, what the heck is this? Those are my notes. It's like, do you even know what this says? I'm like, yeah, I know what it says. I know what it invokes in me, the memories of what I was being taught.
What were your notes about?
No, they were about what was going on in class, but they're very disjointed. I have a lot of, I don't even have an example. I don't have my notebook with me now, but I can show you. I'll have some kind of topic. Then I'll have like little arrows pointing to things, and then I'll have like another little sentence about something else that was related to the topic or whatever. And that's kind of how things are broken out for me. Very odd.
Interesting.
Yeah. I have no doubt that your college notebooks were entertaining as heck to go back and look at.
Well, I scanned them in so I could save them. The good ones.
Oh my God, you scanned your notebooks?
Some of them, they were good. A lot of good stuff in there, in case I ever need it. They were really, well, we had a class, one of our first engineering classes was how to keep a notebook neatly. So, and then we were graded on our notebooks, like how neat it was, did it have contents, was everything well written out and organized. Engineering, so that way you could keep yourself organized.
Engineers are odd ducks, I'll tell you.
The good ones. Maybe. Bad ones too, probably.
Well, thank you again for joining us for another edition of Conversational Chaos. Please follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, any other things, Jason, that we're in right now?
You can check our website at freshgreens, GREENES.com.
Oh, and don't forget, folks, we do have a Patreon and a coffee page. Anything donated will certainly go to upgrading our systems here, and one of these days we should actually post on Instagram a photo of the equipment we're actually using to do this podcast, and I'm sure that the donations would then be flying in based on just how our setup looks right now.
Anything else?
No, I guess that's it.
That's it. Thank you.